It was 365 days, 10 hours, and about 42 minutes ago, I stood on a stage very much like this one, in front of an audience very much like yourselves at the FameLab regional event. And there I told an incredible story about the regenerative capacity of sea urchin. Now, some of you might know what a sea urchin is, but for those of you a little less familiar, it's this pincushiony looking animal that scuttles around the ocean floor looking for tasty algae to eat. But that's not the reason I'm interested in sea urchins per se. I'm interested in them because of their potential for regenerative capacity. It turns out that sea urchins actually might be able to replace lost or damaged tissues, which allow some species to live for an incredibly long time. This story of regeneration is inherently fascinating, and one that actually would become quite personal. It was 40 days, 10 hours, and about 16 minutes ago. I lay on a table that looks like none of the tables in this room. It was cold, metallic. The light was harsh. As a team of surgeons came in and excised 2 lymph nodes from the side of my neck. As I awoke from the anesthesia, the surgeon came to me and he delivered the news that no invincible 22-year-old ever expects to hear. You have cancer. To be honest, my first thoughts were, I was pretty scared. I was maybe a little upset. I didn't really understand why this was happening to me. But also, those thoughts were quickly replaced by ones of hope and ones of science. I wanted to understand this cancer. I wanted to get my head around it. I wanted to understand what was going on. So I began this battery of tests, which have been going on for the last couple weeks before coming here. And one of the tests was for this thing called LDH. Scientists are great at using acronyms that you can't remember, so I couldn't remember it originally. I was like, oh, biochemistry something. Oh, lactate dehydrogenase. But didn't that have to do with cells that didn't require oxygen? What would that have to do with cancer cells? Well, it turns out cancer cells have hijacked this particular molecular machinery. And in fact, what they've done is they use it, instead of energy being used for things like storage, they take all of it and go directly to replication and regeneration. This is an odd phenomenon, and it's actually one that helped them diagnose my disease. And, in this regenerative spectrum, in the black and white, there is some gray. And it was about 0 days and 0 hours, 2 minutes and 30 seconds ago, I was supposed to take this stage and tell you about what we explore. But given some new perspective in life, I also want to tell you why we explore. Because in the end, I realized we explore for our friends and our family. And at the end, I explore for you.
Paul, I think I can speak for the judges in saying how proud we are that you came out despite what's been going on, and how proud I could certainly say I am that you just decided to rock out here and just talk about it. That takes a lot of bravery, and bravo. But, blah, blah. Get back to the sea urchins.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So how does studying sea urchins lead us to better understandings of cancer and lymphoma and stuff like that?
Sure, definitely. So the research I was doing in sea urchins, we're actually specifically looking at stem cells in sea urchins. And this potential that, so a lot of us, we all have stem cells at some point in our lives, but sea urchins actually may maintain them throughout their lifespan, even into adulthood. And it's because of that they may be able to use those when something goes haywire, like a cancer. They've actually never found cancer in sea urchins. So when we can look at a model like that and understand what's happening at the molecular level there, that may help us in the future versus having to treat a disease, being able to stop it completely.
I kind of thought you were going a whole different place with the sea urchins and how they're able to regenerate things, tissues, and whatnot. And I guess my question is, why aren't you just studying that for the sake of understanding how we could regenerate pieces, tissues, body parts that we lose to other reasons other than disease? Is there any application there?
Sure, definitely. So in the echinoderms in general, so those are the spiny skin. So sea urchin, it's a little obvious because they have all the spines. But other echinoderms, like sea stars, they're known if they lose or shed an arm, they can regenerate that. So certainly limb regeneration in the other echinoderms is also studied. Mainly the reason we use sea urchins is that a lot of genetic information is known about them. They've been studied for an incredibly long time. And so we have a lot of valuable tools and deeper genetic techniques that allow us to get at some of those questions of disease.
How did they discover that sea urchins have this unusual regenerative ability?
Sure. One of the first reasons was they found a really old sea urchin. And it was over 200 years old, and they're like, okay, how has this thing been around for such a long time? I mean, just due to age, you get old, things start falling apart. So they needed to look for some answers. And so there was one particular thing. It was this gene, which is sort of like a biological instruction manual, this gene called telomerase reverse transcriptase. And telomeres are in our body, and they're affected by age. And it turned out in sea urchins, the telomeres weren't shortening as they normally would in humans as the sea urchins aged. So then they began to look at other questions of stem cells and regenerative capacities.